Chapter 1. My name is Luca. Hello, dear listener. My name is Luca Romano. Today, I want to share my story with you. This story is about my family, my father, and the streets that raised me. It is about love and fear, about being young and learning how hard life can be. It is a story that started in a small neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York, where my family tried to build a new life. I hope my words help you see my world, feel what I felt, and maybe, at the end, think about your own choices too. Let me take you back to where it all began. The streets where I grew up. I grew up in a poor part of Brooklyn. The streets were narrow, with old brick buildings and laundry hanging from windows. Children played soccer with old cans. The smell of fresh bread from the Italian bakery mixed with the smell of gasoline and hot asphalt. In summer, the air was heavy and smelled of the sea. In winter, everything turned gray, and cold wind cut through our thin jackets. There was noise everywhere. Car horns, shouting neighbors, the sound of trains passing above us on metal tracks. And behind everything, there was always the quiet fear of the people who controlled our streets. Men in dark suits who spoke softly but carried great power. My family. My father's name is Carlo Romano. He was born in a small town near Naples, Italy. As a boy, he helped his father repair cars in a dusty little shop. When he married my mother, Rosa, they decided to move to America to find a better life. My mother, Rosa, is small and gentle. She has soft brown eyes and always wears a simple silver cross around her neck. She loves to cook, and the smell of her tomato sauce made our small apartment feel warm and safe. I was their only child. My father dreamed that I would study, get a good job, and live far from the hard life of the streets. But life doesn't always follow dreams. The auto shop. My father opened a small auto repair shop on a corner near our apartment. It wasn't big, just 3 old garages with peeling paint and a rusty sign that read Romano's Auto Repair. Inside, it smelled of oil, rubber, and metal. My father spent long days there, fixing engines, changing tires, and talking with customers. I often helped him after school. I handed him tools, swept the floor, or cleaned parts with an old rag. I liked the quiet hum of the shop, the sound of my father's voice telling stories about Italy. But outside the shop, the world was different. The shadows of the streets. In our neighborhood, there were men everyone knew but no one spoke about openly. They wore dark suits, gold rings, and moved with quiet confidence. People called them the family or the organization. They didn't look dangerous, but everyone was careful around them. At the center of them was a man named Salvatore Vitali. People called him Sal. He wasn't tall, but he had a strong presence. His hair was always perfectly combed back, and he had deep, dark eyes that seemed to see everything. Sal grew up in the same streets as my father, but he chose a different path. While my father fixed cars, Sal built power, first by running small games, then by helping local businesses stay safe. Over time, people respected him and feared him. Evenings at home. After the shop closed, we always had dinner together. My mother made simple food: pasta, soup, sometimes a small piece of meat on Sundays. We sat at a wooden table with a checkered red cloth. The walls of our apartment were covered with old photos from Italy. My grandparents, olive trees, the sea. My father talked about cars and customers. My mother listened and smiled, sometimes telling stories about her childhood in Italy. And I listened, too, but outside the window, I could hear the world moving. Cars passing, men laughing loudly, and sometimes something that sounded like anger or danger. My childhood thoughts. As a boy, I didn't fully understand why my father sometimes looked worried, or why he spoke so carefully when certain men came to the shop. But I could feel it, the tension, the quiet fear. Sometimes my father sent me inside when those men arrived. I watched from the window as he spoke to them, always with respect, sometimes with a forced smile. At night, lying in bed, I thought about those men. They looked powerful and fearless. Part of me was afraid of them, but part of me admired them, because on these streets, respect meant safety. The first time I saw Sal. One day, when I was around 10 years old, Sal Vitali himself came to our shop. I remember it so clearly. He stepped out of a shiny black car. He wore a dark gray suit, and his shoes shone in the sun. My father wiped his hands on a cloth and walked out to greet him. They spoke quietly. Sal's voice was calm, but my father's shoulders were tense. After a few minutes, Sal looked at me and smiled gently. "What's your name, ragazzo?" he asked. "Luca," I said, my voice small. "Good boy," he said, then turned back to my father. When he left, my father seemed tired, as if he had carried something heavy. Growing up between two worlds. As I grew older, I started to understand more. Our family lived between two worlds. One world was warm. My parents, our small apartment, dinners together, laughter. The other world was cold. The streets, the men in suits, the unspoken rules. Sometimes these worlds touched, like when Sal came to the shop. But my father tried to keep them apart as much as he could. A rainy day that changed everything. Then came the day that changed my life. I was 12. It was raining heavily, and water ran like rivers along the sidewalks. My father asked me to buy bread before the bakery closed. As I walked past a small jewelry store, I saw two men wearing dark jackets and masks. They smashed the glass with a metal bar. The sound echoed in the empty street. For a moment, our eyes met. Then they ran into the night, leaving broken glass and fear behind. At the police station. Soon, the police found me. Someone saw me near the store. They brought me to the station and asked me to look at photos. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it. I recognized one of the men. He was someone I had seen near Sal's club. The officer asked, "Do you know him?" I looked at the photo. My mouth felt dry. In that moment, I remembered my father's worried eyes and the respect I had seen in Sal's world. "I don't know," I whispered. The officer frowned but let me go. Walking home. When I walked home that night, the rain felt cold on my skin. Part of me felt ashamed for lying. Part of me felt relieved. And part of me wondered what would happen next. I didn't know then, but that moment would change everything. How people saw me, how the streets saw me, and how my life would unfold. Chapter 2. My family and the man called Sal. I want to tell you more about my family, because without knowing them, you cannot understand why I made the choices I did. And you cannot feel how heavy those choices felt on my young shoulders. My father's name is Carlo. He was born in a small town near Naples, in the south of Italy. As a boy, he was always around cars. His father, my grandfather, ran a tiny auto shop at the end of a dusty road. They didn't have much money, but they had pride in their work. My father loved engines. He said they had a soul. When he fixed a broken car, he felt like he gave it new life. And when he spoke about engines, his eyes lit up. In the old photos from Italy, my father looked thin and serious. But when he came to America, something changed. He smiled more. Maybe because he believed America was a place where dreams could come true. My mother, Rosa Romano. My mother, Rosa, was born in the same Italian town. She grew up in a small white house with green shutters. She had 3 sisters and loved to sing while helping her mother cook. My father once told me he fell in love with her laugh. He heard it at a village festival, and in that moment, he knew she was the one. When they married and moved to New York, it wasn't easy. My mother didn't speak English at first. She felt lonely in the big city. But she made our home warm and alive with the smells of her cooking. Tomato sauce with fresh basil, bread from the oven, roasted garlic. Every Sunday, no matter how tired my father was, we sat together for dinner. My mother always put a candle on the table, even if the rest of the apartment was small and old. Our apartment. We lived in a small apartment on the 2nd floor of a brick building. The stairs creaked when you walked on them. The hallway smelled of old paint and sometimes of cooked onions from the neighbor's kitchen. Our living room had a brown sofa, a wooden table, and a black and white TV. The walls were covered with photos from Italy. The sea, the hills, my grandparents standing proudly in front of their little shop. My room was small. It had a single bed, a wooden desk, and a window that looked out onto the street. At night, I heard cars, laughter, and sometimes shouts that made me pull the blanket closer. Evenings in our home. Evenings were my favorite time. My father came home from the shop, smelling of oil and metal. My mother kissed his cheek, and we sat down to eat. We spoke in a mix of Italian and English. My father taught me words like wrench, spark plug, and engine. My mother taught me words like love, hope, and home. Sometimes, after dinner, my father turned on the radio. We listened to Italian songs that made my mother close her eyes and smile, remembering her home. Difficult days. But life wasn't always warm and happy. Money was always tight. Sometimes, my father came home with worry in his eyes. I heard my parents talk in low voices at night. My mother asked, "Carlo, what did they say?" My father answered softly, "Nothing to worry about," but his voice sounded tired. As a child, I didn't know exactly who they were, but I knew enough to feel afraid. The first stories about Sal. When I was small, I heard the name Sal whispered by neighbors. Salvatore Vitali. They said he was powerful. They said he could help people or hurt them. Some called him a criminal. Some called him a protector. In our neighborhood, Sal was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. You might see him outside a club late at night or standing by a black car, smoking quietly. But mostly you heard about him in stories. Who was Sal Vitali? Sal was born in Brooklyn too, just like me, but he was born into poverty even harder than ours. His father died young. His mother cleaned houses to feed him and his two sisters. As a boy, Sal worked in the streets, selling newspapers, shining shoes, running errands for older boys. People say he learned fast, learned that respect was worth more than money. At 16, Sal joined a small street gang. By 25, he led it. By 30, he was part of something bigger, the local Mafia family. Sal was not cruel for pleasure, but he believed respect was everything. And sometimes respect had to be taught with fear. Sal's two faces. To some, Sal was a criminal. To others, he was a hero. He helped some families pay rent when fathers lost work. He sent food to widows and toys to children at Christmas. But if someone crossed him, punishment was quick and silent. Sal loved Italian opera. At night, he listened to old records of singers like Caruso and Pavarotti. He painted small pictures of the sea, though few people knew that. This mix, softness and steel, made people fear him and respect him at the same time. Sal and my father. My father never liked to talk about Sal, but sometimes late at night when he thought I was asleep, I heard him. "Rosa," he said softly, "I don't want Luca to get near that life." My mother answered, "I know, but sometimes we don't have a choice." My father wanted to protect me from that world. But in our neighborhood, the shadows reached everyone. Nights in the neighborhood. At night, our street changed. During the day, it was full of life. Kids playing, old men drinking coffee on the corner, women hanging clothes to dry. At night, it felt darker, even when the streetlights glowed. Black cars parked quietly. Men in suits spoke in low voices. Sometimes I heard shouting, then silence. From my window, I watched and wondered, who are these men really? Why do people both fear and respect them? And could someone be both bad and good? My young mind. As a boy, I didn't know the answers, but I felt the pull of that world. Part of me wanted to be like my father. Honest, hardworking, peaceful. Part of me looked at those men, strong, respected, feared, and wondered what it felt like to have power. In my heart, a quiet battle had already begun. The weight on my father's shoulders. One evening, my father came home later than usual. He sat heavily at the table, his hands black with oil, his face tired. I asked, "Papa, are you okay?" He forced a small smile. "I'm fine, Luca. Just tired." But his eyes were sad. He stared at his plate for a long time, not eating. My mother touched his arm gently. They didn't speak, but something passed between them. A silent fear. My mother's strength. My mother, Rosa, was gentle, but never weak. She worked part-time at a small bakery, kneading dough with strong hands. At home, she kept everything clean, cooked, and cared for us. When my father worried, she held his hand. When I had nightmares, she sat beside my bed until I fell asleep. She prayed every night, whispering words in Italian, Signore, proteggi la mia famiglia. Lord, protect my family. Her faith was her strength and sometimes ours too. The balance of two worlds. As I grew, I saw more clearly. My family lived in a delicate balance. On one side, hard work, honesty, love. On the other, fear, power, respect from dangerous men. My father walked this balance every day, hoping I would never have to. But life had other plans. A memory I can't forget. One rainy evening, I saw Sal standing across the street, talking to two men. The rain ran off his black coat. His hair was wet, but he didn't seem to notice. He spoke calmly, his hands in his pockets. The men listened closely, nodding. In that moment, I realized Sal wasn't just feared because of violence. He was feared because he controlled himself. Because when he spoke softly, everyone listened. That image stayed with me for years. Between love and respect. My father wanted me to earn respect through kindness and work. Sal taught others to give respect through power and fear. And I was just a boy, caught between two men I admired in different ways. I didn't know yet that one day, I would have to choose which lesson mattered most. Chapter 3. When the Streets Call Your Name. My story really began on that rainy night when I was 12, standing in the police station, my heart beating like a drum. I told the police I didn't recognize the men who broke the jewelry store window. In that moment, I felt both fear and something strange. A dark pride. I didn't know it then, but my answer traveled through the streets faster than the wind. The day after. The next day, I went to school as usual. The sidewalks were wet, and the air smelled of rain and car exhaust. As I walked, some older boys from the neighborhood looked at me differently. One boy nodded. Another said softly, "Respect, Luca." At first, I didn't understand. But when I got to my father's shop after school, I saw a black car parked outside. Sal Vitali stood next to it, smoking a cigarette. Sal's visit. Sal turned when he saw me. His face was calm, but his eyes looked deep into mine. "You did good, ragazzo," he said. His voice was soft, almost gentle. "You protected yourself. And your family." He put his hand on my shoulder. It was heavy, warm, and somehow comforting. In that moment, I felt something I had never felt before. Respect from a man everyone feared. My father's reaction. When Sal left, my father stood silently by the door. His face was pale, his lips tight. "Luca," he said quietly, "I wanted a different life for you." I looked at him, confused and a little angry. "Papa, I only did what I thought was right." He didn't answer. Instead, he sat heavily on an old chair, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. My mother, Rosa, wiped her hands on her apron and watched us with worried eyes. That evening, dinner was quiet. The only sound was the ticking of the old clock on the wall. Seeds of change. After that day, things slowly changed. Some boys at school who used to laugh at my worn-out shoes now spoke to me with respect. A man from Sal's crew came to the shop one morning. He shook my father's hand and said, "If anyone bothers you, you tell us." My father forced a smile and nodded, but I saw the fear in his eyes. And inside me, something else grew. A curiosity, even a desire, to know more about the world Sal came from. Lessons from the streets. One Saturday, Sal invited me to a boxing gym he owned. It smelled of sweat, leather, and chalk dust. "Every man must know how to defend himself," he said. He showed me how to hold my fists, how to move my feet, how to look into another man's eyes without fear. At first, my punches were weak, my arms too thin, but I kept trying. Each time I fell, Sal told me, "Again." Slowly, my body grew stronger, and something inside me grew stronger too. Evening thoughts. At home, my father noticed the bruises on my arms. "Luca, you don't need this," he said softly. "But Papa," I answered, "I feel stronger." He sighed, looking older than before. "I wanted you to be strong here," he said, touching my chest. "Not just here." And he touched my fists. His words stayed with me, but the streets had their own lessons. Life at home. Despite everything, our life at home still had warmth. My mother cooked her tomato sauce with fresh garlic and basil. The smell filled the apartment, making it feel safe. On Sundays, we still had dinner together. My father told old stories about Italy. The olive trees, the sea, the sound of church bells. For a few hours, I could forget the streets, forget the dark cars outside. But the older I got, the more those two worlds mixed inside me. Nights in Brooklyn. At night, I sometimes walked the streets alone. I watched men in suits talk quietly in front of clubs. I saw young boys run messages for them, dreaming of respect. I smelled the city. Pizza, oil, smoke, and rain on concrete. And I thought, what is strength? Is it my father's kindness? Or Sal's power? The question followed me everywhere. Becoming useful. When I turned 14, Sal began to give me small tasks. "Go to this club," he said once, "and tell Angelo to call me." Another time, "Take this envelope to the tailor. Say nothing, give it to him, and leave." I never asked what was inside, and no one ever asked me what I was doing. Each time I felt my heart race, but I also felt important. My father's fight. Meanwhile, my father kept working hard at the shop. Some days he came home late, his hands black with oil, his back bent with pain. Sometimes, men from another gang came and threatened him. "Pay us or you'll regret it," they said. My father refused, but each refusal left a new crack in his spirit. I saw it even if he tried to hide it. Conflict inside me. At night, lying in bed, I thought about what to do. Part of me wanted to help my father by asking Sal for protection. Part of me feared what that might cost. And part of me liked the feeling of being respected by men like Sal. I was only a boy, but the streets were making me older inside. My mother's prayers. My mother noticed the change in me. She prayed longer each night, her rosary beads clicking softly. One evening, she sat beside me and said, "Luca, remember who you are." I looked into her gentle eyes and whispered, "I don't know who I am anymore." She kissed my forehead. "You are our son. That is enough." The turning point. One evening, the rival gang came again. They broke the shop's windows, smashed tools, and left a note. "Next time, it will be worse." My father sat on the floor among broken glass, his face in his hands. My mother tried to clean up, tears running down her cheeks. I stood in the doorway, my fists clenched, feeling fire in my chest. In that moment, I made a choice. Going to Sal. That night, I went to see Sal. His office smelled of cigar smoke and old wood. "I need your help," I said. He looked at me silently, then nodded. "You've become a man, Luca." Inside me, fear and pride mixed like dark and light. Sal agreed to help my father. But deep down, I knew nothing in this world was free. By asking for his help, I stepped deeper into his world. A world my father feared, but a world that had power to protect. The streets accept you. After that night, people on the street looked at me differently. Some older men nodded with respect. Young boys watched me, maybe dreaming to be like me one day. And I realized, once the streets accept you, they never fully let you go. My father's silence. My father never asked me what I did. But one evening, he sat beside me and said, "I hope you understand. Power can protect, but it can also destroy." I nodded. He sighed, his eyes tired, and said quietly, "I wanted you to be free, Luca." I didn't answer because I didn't know if freedom was possible anymore. Alone at night. Sometimes, at night, I walked to the old pier and looked at the water. The city lights reflected in the black waves. I thought about my father's dream, that I would study, find honest work, build a family. And I thought about Sal's lesson, that respect is won by strength, not by dreams. In my heart, both voices spoke, and I didn't know yet which one would guide me in the end. Chapter 4: Becoming a Man. Years passed. I was no longer a thin boy with curious eyes. I became taller, my shoulders wider, my voice deeper. The streets changed me, and I changed too. But deep inside, I was still Luca Romano, son of Carlo and Rosa. Life in Brooklyn as I grew. The neighborhood was the same. Narrow streets, old brick buildings, fire escapes like black skeletons on the walls. But I saw it differently now. I noticed fear in people's eyes when they spoke about Sal. I noticed respect too. And I noticed my own reflection in dirty shop windows. A young man with tired eyes who had seen too much for his age. My father's shop in danger. My father kept working in his little auto shop. His hands were older now, skin cracked from oil and cold winters. His back bent more each year, but he never stopped. The rival gang didn't stop either. They wanted money. My father refused. They broke windows again. They scratched customers' cars, threw paint on the doors. Each time, my father tried to fix everything himself. But I could see the fear behind his brave face. My choice. One evening, my father sat in his chair, staring at the floor. "Papa," I said, "maybe we should ask Sal for help." His head lifted. His eyes, tired and sad, met mine. "I don't want you in that world, Luca," he whispered. "I'm already there," I answered softly. His shoulders fell, as if my words took away his last hope. Talking to Sal. That night, I went to see Sal. He sat behind a wooden desk, a lamp casting shadows on the walls. "I need your help," I said. "They're hurting my father's shop." Sal nodded slowly. "You've grown, Luca," he said. "Are you ready for what comes after?" I swallowed hard. "Yes." He looked into my eyes for a long moment. Then he called 2 men and gave quiet orders. The meeting. A few nights later, Sal arranged a meeting with the rival gang's boss. We met in an empty lot behind old warehouses. The ground was wet, and the air smelled of rust and rain. Sal stood beside me. My heart beat so loudly I could barely hear anything else. The rival boss came with 3 men. His face was hard, eyes cold. Finding my voice. Sal looked at me. It was my moment to speak. My legs felt weak, but I stepped forward. "You will leave my father's shop alone," I said, my voice shaking at first. I took a deep breath. "Or you'll answer to me, and to Sal Vitali." The rival boss watched me silently. Seconds felt like hours. Finally, he nodded once, and turned to leave. After the meeting, rain began to fall as they disappeared into the night. Sal put his hand on my shoulder. "You spoke like a man tonight," he said. My chest felt tight but also light, like I had finally done something right. When I came home, my father waited outside. His face was pale in the streetlight. "You did this?" he asked. "Yes, Papa," I said. "I couldn't watch them destroy you anymore." He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them, full of something I had never seen before: pride and sadness. "I wanted to protect you from this," he whispered. "And I wanted to protect you," I answered. Silent respect. For days after, my father didn't speak much, but he worked with new strength. The shop was safe now. No broken windows, no threats. And though he never said it, I saw it in his eyes. He was grateful. But inside I felt heavy. I had chosen power over peace. I had stepped deeper into Sal's world. And I knew the streets had given me respect, but had also taken something from me. Sal and my father. One evening, my father and Sal met by accident outside the shop. They stood in silence for a moment. Then my father spoke first. "Thank you for watching over my son," he said. Sal nodded. "He's a good man," he answered softly. Two men so different, but in that moment they shared respect. Looking at the city. That night, I walked alone to the pier. The city lights danced on the water. I thought of my father's quiet strength and Sal's steel strength, and I understood both had shaped me. The boy I had been was gone. In his place stood a young man, still afraid sometimes, but no longer helpless. Back at the shop, life went on. I worked with my father, hands black with oil by evening. I smelled gasoline and old leather, heard the hum of engines and my father's quiet singing. And though the streets had taught me to fight, my father's shop taught me something too, the pride of honest work. My mother's words. One night, my mother sat beside me. "You did what you had to do," she said gently, "but never forget who you really are." Her words stayed in my heart, softer than Sal's lessons, but just as strong. Between two worlds. I realized I didn't have to choose completely. I could be my father's son, and also be strong enough to protect what we loved. I could walk in both worlds. Carefully. The morning after. The next morning, my father and I opened the shop together. Sunlight touched the broken bricks, the dusty sign. For the first time in years, the street felt safe. And for the first time, I felt truly like a man. Not because of fear I could bring, but because of love I could protect. Chapter 5: What I Learned. Dear listener, this was my story. The story of a boy who grew up in the narrow streets of Brooklyn, between the smell of fresh bread and cold fear, between my father's quiet strength and Sal's powerful shadow. I want to tell you what I learned. Lesson 1. Strength comes in many forms. As a boy, I thought strength meant power, that respect came only through fear. But I saw my father wake up every morning, tired but ready to work. He never hurt anyone, yet people respected him because he was honest, loyal, and kind. That is also strength. Lesson 2. Sometimes we must fight. The world is not always kind. Sometimes, to protect what we love, we must be ready to stand tall. I didn't want to become cruel, but I couldn't stand and watch my father's life be destroyed. So I spoke up. I faced my fear. And in that moment, I understood courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what is right, even when we are afraid. Lesson 3. We are made by many hands. I am my father's son, but I am also the boy Sal taught to stand firm. My mother's faith shaped my heart. The streets shaped my courage. All these parts live inside me, and that is true for everyone. We are made by the love and pain we receive from others. Lesson 4. Never forget who you are. In the darkest moments, remember your true self. Money, power, fear, they pass. But kindness, honesty, and love leave a mark on the world that lasts longer than fear. Looking back. Now, when I walk through those same streets, I see young boys with eyes like mine used to be. I want to tell them, respect can come from fear, but true respect comes from your heart. Be brave, but also be kind. And never forget your family, your roots, your soul. Dear listener, maybe your life is different from mine. Maybe you don't live in Brooklyn, and you don't know men like Sal. But each of us must choose to watch in silence or to stand up for what we love, to become hard and cold, or to keep our hearts open even in pain. My hope for you, I hope you choose love. I hope you find strength not just in your fists, but also in your words, your kindness, your patience. And if life pushes you to the streets, remember, the streets can teach, but they can also take. Never let them take your soul. Ending words for the video. Thank you, dear listener, for staying with me until the end of this story. If my story touched your heart, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Write in the comments what lesson you learned from my journey. I would love to hear your thoughts. And remember, be strong, but also be kind. See you in the next story.